All right, everybody, what is up? This is the inaugural version of Hops News Geek. Not to be
Hey,
confused with the
hey.
normal Hops News, but first of all, I'm your co host, Mash. You might know me from the regular Hops News, and I'm here with Hoppy Mommy.
Hey, how's everybody doing tonight?
And yeah, we are here as an outlet of the two things that we love most in this world, and that is geek culture and beer. This is pretty much just going to take you on the adventure of we're going to keep it real loose, real silly, just talk about things that we love about Marvel, DC, anything that has to do with nerd culture. This is where you will be able to find it, as well as we're going to drink some pretty good beers. So with that said, Hoppy, what you drinking?
I actually just opened a beer from Listerman Brewing Company, and this is one of probably the geekiest labels you'll find.
Is
That is
that
Samuel L. Jackson holding the purple lightsaber with snakes on a plane, and he's dressed like Pulp Fiction. And it says, I've had it with these mother effing IPAs at this mother effing brewery.
that might be the best can I've ever seen in my life, and I've
I
seen a lot of good cans from you lately.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing, but they really dropped the ball with the fact that he doesn't have an eye patch. So,
Oh,
I
they
mean,
did.
come
You're
on.
right. You're
They
right.
missed a huge, it may be a raptor in the background,
We
or
severely
maybe have him in a
miss
wheelchair too.
anything, or just his arm dangling over a chain link fence in the background. I don't
Ooh,
know,
there you go.
something. I was just watching that movie, I think yesterday after I got home from my hike, by the way, and my wife's like, "It's gonna be too scary for our son." I'm like, "It's just dinosaurs. It's okay." And then his arm plops over, and my son screeches and starts running away. So I was like, "All right, maybe you're right."
Oh, that
But
was actually my daughter's favorite movie when she was about 4. But
see,
I would jump in front of the TV every time the lawyer scene came up, and I'd be like, "Hey!" But yeah, she would watch it on repeat. It's
I
actually when she gets text messages, it's actually a raptor going, oh, or whatever
oh,
the
that is
sound is.
perfect. I used for the longest time. I always thought that that's actually like the dinosaur noises, but I don't think that's actually true. But in my head, you know what? We're gonna stay true. Um, Dr. Grant, he invented the raptor noise, and that's how I've lived my life since 1994.
There you go.
Uh,
93.
oh, it was 93. You're right. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I get my years mixed up. It's all the same. I was like 3 or 4 years old, so that's when I first started watching it.
No, I remember seeing that in the theater. My mom was like, we are going in this new Dolby surround sound theater, and it was a big deal.
And now we're in IMAX and 3D, and we have 4D theaters that rain on you if it's raining in the movie.
I know. I need to go to one of those. We have one in Orlando, but I've never been.
And now movies are canceled forever, so you'll be just watching from your
I
house.
know.
So just have your husband sprinkle water over you if it's raining inside the next Marvel movie.
There you go. If we ever get to see the next Marvel movie, Black Widow got
Very
delayed
true.
again.
November, I believe, right?
I don't know. I haven't even seen it. It was supposed to be April, so I don't know.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Wonder Woman's November. I can't remember what Black Widow. It was pushed from April to August, but I think that even that's getting pushed back because,
Yeah.
as you can see, we're all going to be grounded for the rest of 2020, and that's just how it's
Yep.
going to go.
Yeah,
Uh,
and Wonder Woman. I was really excited about that one as well. I'm more
I
excited about Black Widow, but
see. I'm a DC fan more so, which we'll get into that in a minute. As far as what I'm drinking, I chose something that's going to benefit everybody. I know they probably won't be able to see it, but I'll describe it. It's called City of Good. I figured what better way to kick off the Hops News Geek than with a beer that's benefiting, community benefit beer. It's actually packaged by Payette Brewing Company, but it's brewed by Lost Grove, which is out of Boise as well. They're a smaller brewery who they actually have some sneakily good stuff. It's nice IPA, a little 5%er, one of those that you can crush out there doing the lawn all day like I do. So highly, highly recommend it. As you can see, I'm always drinking the Idaho beers when I can and promoting.
we'll be getting some Florida beers next week. Oh, this one's actually
Yes.
pretty low too. It's only 5.5. Huh.
See, we're keeping it light tonight because on Tuesdays and Thursdays when we do Hops News, we tend to roll out the 11, 12, 13 percenters, and it just gets a little crazy from there. And twice a week's enough for me. My liver, my old frail body can't handle any more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes they go a little too hard. But we'll
Yeah.
keep these ones light.
These ones are just on the lighter side, much like our conversation, of which is going to be on these. If you know anything about us, you've watched our shows Tuesdays or Thursdays, you know that we tend to go on tangents about comic books and all things. That is what we live, that's what we breathe. And now we decided to do a little beer comic book action, not to be confused with the guys who we have had on over at Hop Heroes Pod. They do it way better than we could ever do it.
Yeah.
They get really into it. JR over there, he is actually an artist. They might have a little comic book action coming out. They do a lot of really good things on that podcast. So if you get a chance, check out Hop Heroes Pod. This is going to be nothing like that. We don't have the credentials. We just like to talk what we think. You know, Hoppy thinks Iron Fist is the worst MCU. I think
It's
it's
true.
Jessica Jones.
Oh,
It's going
it's
to be
still not Jessica Jones.
all things like that. So with that said, let's get into a little intro on how we got into the nerd culture.
Our origin story.
This is how it all begins. Luckily, my parents were not murdered like Bruce Wayne, but Batman is my favorite superhero of all time. I remember I was not even born when 1989 Tim Burton's Michael Keaton Batman came out. I was still a year away from gracing this world with my presence. So I remember watching when I was a few years old. My first was Batman Returns with Michael Keaton. My parents had it on, and I was very, very young, and I started watching that, and I was like, "Hey, this Batman guy, cool!" So I started running around as Batman, which then turned into Power Rangers. I was a Power Ranger for like 5 years in a row. Um, got my first comic book when I was 6 years old. I honestly can't even remember what it was now, to be honest with you. And then that was right around the time when Val Kilmer was Batman, Mr. Freeze, the Riddler with Jim
Mr.
Carrey.
Freeze.
You're not sending me to the cooler. All that stuff. That is what captured mine. And I still to this day I love those movies so much. But from then on, I was hooked. The Batman, the comic books. It was so cheesy, and I love it so much. And that's kind of where I got started. And of course, I branched off. I started learning more about Iron Man, who's my favorite Marvel character. And then when I was about 12, I picked up my first Flash comic book and started reading that. And Flash is my second favorite. He's almost tied with Batman. Batman, it's just, if it wasn't for Batman, me finding Batman first, I think Flash would be my favorite character. But I got to go with the nostalgic. Hey, Batman was my first. It's my first and only love, man. So that's kind of how I got into it. And of course, now I've collections and collections of comic books. I'm there at the midnight releases. I think I saw Batman, The Dark Knight. I'm sorry, it's The Dark Knight 3 times opening weekend. First one was at midnight, and then I was back there like 3 or 4 times that weekend. So I live.
And now they don't even do them at midnight anymore. You can actually go the day before at like 8.
You
It's
can,
nice.
yes. It is perfect because I go to bed at like 8:30. So if I'm
Yeah.
starting a movie at midnight, I will not make it. Especially, I went and saw Endgame. I went to the midnight showing of Endgame, and I didn't get out of that theater till like 3 in the morning. I was
Oh, we
dead.
saw it at like 7. But yeah, I remember the first Avengers movie. I was like 6, 7 months pregnant and standing in that line. I
Oh
was
my
still seeing that
god!
movie at midnight.
In the
I like,
Florida heat. Oh my god!
well, it was May, so it wasn't that bad, and it was dark. But you're only allowed those 2 cups of caffeine, so I like waited till like 11 o'clock that night to give a frappuccino.
Oh man, I
It
can't
was
even
worth
imagine.
it. I mean,
I
I still remember seeing the first time you saw all the Avengers in the middle of New York fighting. It was
they're
awesome.
the camera circles around them. You're like, holy shit! I'm
Hmm.
actually seeing the Avengers on screen right now. This is amazing. That's what my
Yeah.
Justice League should have been, but we'll have to get into that
Oof.
later on. Tell us about your origin story. What got you
My
into the world?
Mine's actually later in life. Well, I mean, some people consider Disney like geek culture, so I guess if you could
Oh,
say
it
that, I
absolutely
always,
is.
it's at MegaCon and Comic Con and whatnot. But that little part of your brain that's supposed to turn off when you're like, I don't know, in high school, if you're big into Disney, mine never turned off. So I mean, my high school room and my dorm room were filled with Winnie the Pooh. I had a toaster in high school that would
Winnie
play
the
Winnie the
Pooh.
Pooh, and my alarm clock did too. It used to drive my roommate nuts.
Oh my gosh.
But we're still friends. She actually won a bomber jacket on the last Top Snooze. But no, my origin as far as more of the Marvel stuff and Star Wars came much later. When they first did the movies with Tobey Maguire and then Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, I saw these movies and I just fell in love with them. And then I would ask friends who actually read the comics. I wanted to know more. Well, who was this character and what was that? And so I ended up picking up a Wolverine comic book, and I remember reading an actual book. I still have it. That's all just about Wolverine, and I just read it cover to cover. Nice thick book, and I mean, he's hands down my favorite character. And it kind of just morphed into that. Like I remember seeing Iron Man 1 at midnight in the theater. So at that point, I was so in
Yes.
love with these movies that it was like I was seeing all of the Marvel movies at midnight. DC, I usually wait. I'm not in love with it, but I love the DC shows. Now, I've never actually read a DC comic book, which I need to do because I heard they're
Oh,
actually better than Marvel.
they are, and the
But I
artwork
read,
is far better, I believe.
yeah. But I actually read more independent comics than I do Marvel. But that's kind of how I got into it. And as far as Star Wars, I'm a total bandwagon fan there because they totally rehauled Disney World. And finally, I looked at my daughter. I'm like, if we really want to enjoy Hollywood studios, we need to watch these movies. I remember my mom making me watch the original ones when I was a kid and me kind of rolling my eyes. I was like 12 or 13. And then I watched them again as an adult. And then when I rewatched them again, they were better. And I'm like, oh shit, these movies get better every time you watch them.
Which is kind of incredible. Like, I feel the same way. So I remember watching them as a kid, and then when episode 1 came out, it was 99. I was there at midnight as a 9-year-old with my dad and our neighbor. We saw episode 1, 2, and 3 all at midnight, ready to go. We were rocking. To me, I my 9-year-old self, I didn't think there was anything wrong with Jar Jar Binks or how episode 1 played out. Of course, there's a lot of hate later on. I was like, 9-year-old me is this pod racing? Hell yeah, give me more of that. And then, of course, you have the lightsaber fight. So that was my really, really first, which got me hooked on Star Wars. And of course, I went back and had to rewatch. And you always heard like, "Oh, Luke, I am your father," even though it's not the actual line.
Right.
But
No, yeah.
to me as a kid, like, I would always say that. And then going back and rewatching, like you said, it's these movies get better. And so I was watching episode 3 with my son, May the 4th. And of course, you get to the part which, if you don't cry when Anakin and Obi-Wan fight and Obi-Wan tells him how much he loved him, then you're probably not human. Because I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God, this is the point. And my son just goes, Dad, this is so sad. They're friends. Why are they fighting? I was like, now wait a second, man. That just kind of broke me. So Star Wars, Star Wars, I probably am almost even a bigger fan of Star Wars than I am like Marvel, DC. So just I highly recommend you get into at least the animated movies for DC, because of what DC has done with the animated movies is phenomenal. I can't recommend those enough. If you haven't watched or read Flashpoint, that is a great jumping off point. Flashpoint is an excellent, excellent story.
I know the premise because they did that in the CW show.
Yep. Well, this is the way they do it here way better. And then for Batman, I actually recommend The Dark Knight Returns. The animated movie part 1 and part 2, probably the best, like, Superman. That's what Batman v Superman should have been. Obviously
You're not
change it up
just
a
screaming
little.
Martha.
See,
That was terrible. That was terrible.
it was bad, but I have such a soft spot for that movie. I will defend it until the day that I die. I don't know why. Justice League, you're on your own. I can't help Justice League. Nothing can help
I
Justice
thought Batman vs Superman was worse than Justice League, but Man of Steel was good. I like this Henry Cavill. Is it his name? I like him as Superman.
He like embodies Superman, even off the screen. If you just like, because the way I work is, if I like something, I just immerse myself into it. Maybe that's just my ADD brain, whatever. So I follow him on like all the Twitter, the Instagram, and he's just like such a good dude that he's Superman outside of the costume. And he loves playing the role. So I really would love to see more of him in the costume, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, and well, all of the DC stuff, though, they've done an amazing job with the show. And so I have wanted to go back and watch or read some of them. I just haven't done it. But I don't know if did you watch the recent Crisis yet? You still haven't watched that, have you?
See, I still haven't watched that.
Great job with all the crossovers, and they brought in old Supermans, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody who hasn't seen it, but there was a lot of exciting like moments. But like, I stopped watching Supergirl a while ago because it got a little too cheesy for me. So now I only watch the crossovers.
That's kind of where I'm at too.
I haven't done Batwoman either, and I heard that she's already leaving Ruby Rose.
So she is leaving. Apparently she got really badly injured, and then overall she just, when you do a TV show, it's different than a movie. In a movie, you're filming a few months. Yeah, it's a strenuous schedule, whereas a TV show, you got to think 23, 24 episodes. They're an hour long. That's a lot to take on.
Yeah.
And so I guess she just wasn't really happy with the role. It was kind of like a mutual, like, hey, yeah, let's go part ways. And they had said that they were just going to seamlessly transition without even mentioning it, somebody else play her role. But I think they actually changed their minds, and they're going to rebrand Batgirl. Somebody else is going to take up the mantle now. And I'm interested. I haven't seen Batgirl yet, but I'm
That
interested
makes
to
more
see how they
sense.
do
Yeah.
it. So I think it does make sense because then you get the kind of jarring like
Yeah, I
this.
haven't seen it either.
Like you said, I stopped watching Supergirl as well, and Flash was always my favorite, and so was Arrow for a while. Besides season
Yeah.
6,
Arrow
but
got really bad and then it got better. But Legends is my favorite now. Legends got really
yes,
good.
I
At first I was like, oh God, this is where all their shitty actors go to die. And then all of a sudden, I don't know what happened.
Legends was great. They had like, of course, like you said, you have Firestorm, and then you had Mick on there.
Mick's one of my
Cold,
favorites.
like they were all in there. I know they got rid of a couple people. If you haven't seen it, there are a big change up now, and actually haven't caught up on this season. But like you said, yeah, like they just mesh so well, and it's so lighthearted and fun, which is kind of what you
Yeah.
expect out of a CW show. There's a cheese factor, but it works.
Right. Well, and they break the fourth wall a little bit. They
Hmm.
totally call themselves out. And I think that's when the show got better, is when they started making fun of themselves. And it used to just be Mick making or Rory making fun of them. But now they all make fun of themselves. Like even with the Crisis one, they're like, "Oh yeah, we didn't do the Crisis," or like only some of them were in it. They're like, "Yeah, we skipped the Crisis this year," so or the crossover, as they were actually calling it a crossover. But yeah, like the day the one guy Nate was, saw a DeLorean, they were in the '80s. He's like, "Now that's a time machine." And then his dad's Biff. I'm like, oh, this just keeps getting better. And then he totally did one of the like make like a tree and get out of here lines. I was like, this is amazing. So if anybody gave up on Legends because they thought it was terrible, don't give up. It gets better. It gets much, much better. It's kind of like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where it was terrible and then it got better.
See,
And Agents has been great this year.
I haven't watched. I watched season 1, and I was just like, ugh. I had to like really drag myself
Season
through
one,
it.
terrible. It was Winter Soldier. There was just a scene where it was like all of a sudden all the cheese made sense.
Right. And that's like Winter Soldier, though, to me, honestly, is if it's, we're not counting Endgame because, the portal scene at
It's by
Endgame is something
itself.
different.
Yeah.
But if you're looking at Winter Soldier, that's honestly like my favorite MCU movie just because
Yeah.
it has everything you want in it. It's like Cap being Cap. And then, you have like the spy going on about it. And it's just, that was my favorite MCU movie personally.
No, I agree. We actually watched we watched that and Endgame and Captain America on 4th of July. They were just running all day.
I did see that. I watched Independence Day, of course, because
Mm.
no 4th of July is complete. My wife hadn't watched Independence Day. So I obviously was like, what are you talking about? We have to sit down and watch this right now.
Wait, the old one or the new one?
No, there's only one Independence Day.
Okay,
That
because I haven't even
is,
seen the new one.
no, do not watch the new one. There is only
Okay.
one Independence Day. It is with Jeff Goldblum. It is with Will Smith. And it is
Yes.
just everything
And
that
Bill
you.
Pullman.
Yes,
I
and he
love
gives
him
that
as the
iconic
president.
speech. That iconic speech. I wish Bill Pullman was president right now, but that's a conversation for a whole different time. We're not going to get into that.
But I love when he goes, "I belong in the air." And then there's a scene when he gets off the plane and his hair is all messy, and then he turns around and his hair's slicked back again.
Yes, I think like the best part. It's not even like it's the best part, but it's also morbid. Is like his wife just died, but he's walking out here like, "Ah, this sucks." And then 2 minutes later, he's like, "Hell yeah, we beat the aliens! It's the best day ever." And I'm like, dude, you still got to reconcile with the fact that your like wife just kind of passed away, and like you have this small daughter to kind of deal with all that. Which I guess heat a moment, you beat aliens. Like, yeah, I get it.
Right? You get a moment.
But like overall, like, hey man, you still got some other things to worry about here.
Yeah. Well, I hate flying. Anytime there's any turbulence, I'm just like not a fan of it. And so I always say I'm not like Bill Pullman. I do not belong in the air.
We belong in the ground.
Yes. Or in the ocean. I can swim. I cannot fly.
See, I personally am terrified of the ocean. I do not belong in the ocean. I love flying. I actually want to be a helicopter pilot. That's like something I really want to do on the side. Just, I always joke around when I get old, I'm just going to write comic books and I'm going to fly helicopters for like scenic tourists. That's what I'm going to do.
See, I just want to live by the beach and paint Disney things and drink beer. That's what I want to do. I'll wave at you as you fly by.
I'm flying over with tourists, just tossing a beer down to you or whatever. But
Perfect.
yes, I think future episodes, we're going to have to do like certain beer. So yeah, that was kind of, I guess, our intros into it. On future episodes, I think we were talking about what were some things we were talking about? I mean, pairing beer with different Marvel characters, or not even
Well, I
Marvel.
honestly think we should do that every episode. Kind of like, I mean, if like I had one that was very obviously geek themed on its own, but just kind
Yes.
of, if you have, I don't know, a Stone IPA, you can, oh, this is an arrogant bastard and it looks like Hellboy. I don't know. You know,
That's some good idea, actually. Yeah.
and maybe like I took a picture right before I drank this, obviously because it's a super sweet can, and I added a purple lightsaber and everything.
Ooh,
But maybe even post the pictures to, like, we could do our beers side by side and tonight's Hop Geek Snooze, whatever. But
yes.
that would be more so for promotion. But yeah, I'm just thinking like do a little bit of that, and then we can even ask people. But I think doing things like talking about the end of Game of Thrones, just bullshit kind of things that are actually fun to talk about. We don't need to dissect the whole episode or anything. Leave that to Hop Heroes.
Yes, Hop Heroes, like I said, they are becoming good friends of ours. And if you haven't seen, they are actually auctioning off artwork through the end of July. I have actually placed a bid on a sweet Miles Morales watercolor painting done
Oh, that's
by their
cool.
very own JR. Check out his stuff; he does phenomenal work. But yeah, here
Yeah.
on what we do, we're just a couple of nerds drinking good beer, talking like you would after a movie. When you just walk out of that movie, you're like,
Oh
oh
my
man,
god.
I loved this part of it. And it isn't until later that you're like, I actually had some problems with this movie. So we're not going to get into the nitty gritty. We're not going to argue. It's not going to be anything like that. It's
And
just
people can throw out ideas like, hey, who do you think would win in this? I mean, I know a lot of people do that, but we both have very different opinions about the end of Game of Thrones or who the worst MCU
very,
character is, because it's definitely Iron Fist.
it is
Um,
Jessica Jones, because I just feel like, well, next episode, we're going to discuss about why Hoppy thinks that it's Iron Fist, which I'm not disagreeing necessarily. Iron Fist was an awful show, but for me personally, I thought Jessica Jones was just lacking something that I connected with, I guess. Whereas I guess I connected nothing with Iron Fist either. But we'll get into more of that next episode. Yeah, if
it's really
anybody,
hard.
yeah,
That's a little hard there to keep my comments to myself. But yeah, you're right. Let's save that one.
I feel like that could fill a good next episode.
Yeah.
As far as any ideas, people reach out to us. You can find me at Matthew Tyler. You can reach out to us via Hops News, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram as well. Matthew Tyler. Shoot me a Facebook message even. These are all things we love interacting. We love talking, and no idea is a bad idea. Hoppy, where can we find
Absolutely.
you if people have questions?
I'm always on the Instagram and the Untapped at the Hoppy Mommy, no spaces. And yeah, I post a lot of geek stuff. I post a lot of beer stuff, and that's about it.
And maybe if you're lucky, I will gradually post the Lego collection that I have. It's a Star Wars and
Dun,
Avengers
dun,
Lego
dun.
collection. I'm gonna start pairing beers with my Lego collection,
Yes.
I think, just for some promotional purposes of what we are doing here.
Yeah, you
But
definitely need to do that.
that's all next time on this episode of Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, jeez.
So I think that about does it for this episode. It's a little shorter, but it's an introduction. We don't want to overwhelm anybody who may be checking it out for the first time. We are going to probably do this once a week, so you can always check on the Hops News YouTube page. Probably working on getting on Spotify, any other streaming platform that you may want to listen to. So be sure to tune in, and we will be in touch soon.
Yes, cheers.
Cheers.